We are a peaceful people. Struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, the time when I eat. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. We are a peaceful people. Struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, the time when I eat. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one cries, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We are a peaceful people, struggle is with struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know, we gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, the time when I though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it, we have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We are a peaceful people, struggle is with struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass.
of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana to be duly constituted and in session. The clerk will lead us in prayers.
Almighty God, we are here gathered together to most humbly beseech thee to guide us in all our consultations, so that we may together build a land where knowledge is free, where the mind is without fear, and the head is held high, and where words come from the depth of truth. Grant us, O God, thy need and guidance, so that we may deal justly with the several causes that come before us, laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and personal preferences, so that the result of our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion, the preservation of justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the President, and the peace and prosperity of Guyana. Grant us, O God, the vision so to lead that all the people of this fair land went into that state of brotherhood and unity when the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action.
Okay. Honorable members, please be seated.
Messages from the President. Announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, few quick announcements. The first is the members of the business subcommittee are reminded to them that at 4 p.m. today, we will have that meeting to look at the time allocated to the estimates. Members and staff, visitors, I'm pleading with you, when there is a speaker, especially at the podium, try to refrain from using the stairs behind them or moving in front of them or behind them. Uh, we want the feed to look as professional as it could, and many times we see a lot of movement behind the two speakers when they are at the podium. So if we could look at that, we have, I know in some parliaments they call them pages, but we have two assembly attendants here, and members are very okay with how to signal them and utilize their services if you want to move messages around and you don't want to be seen on your mobile devices doing that. The third is what is becoming uh, a chronic issue in the House, and that is criticisms of the decision of the Speaker. And I had an opportunity to listen to the Honorable Member Ms. Cathy Hughes yesterday criticizing a decision of the Speaker. And I would expect the Honorable Member would do the honorable thing. I would leave it at that. I want to also say that, and I said this before, the Chief Whips and I met on the issue of addressing the dress code in the National Assembly. That dress code is in your handbook. And I will apply the standing orders and what is contained in the handbook until they are changed. The Chief Whips and I and the clerk met, and we said addressing the issue of dress code in the National Assembly will be the first item on the agenda of the Parliamentary Management Committee when we meet immediately after the consideration of the estimates have been completed. I said that before. And we are all honorable people, professionals, well experienced and educated. And I don't think anyone in this House has an issue with comprehension. Mr. Clerk?
Presentation of petitions, presentation of papers and reports, etc. Reports from committees. Oral questions without notice. Questions on notice.
Honorable members, today we have 5 questions on the order paper, and they are all for written replies. These questions, numbers 1 to 5, are in the name of the Honorable Member Ms. Geeta Chandan Edmond and are for the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs. The answers to all of these questions have been received and have therefore, in accordance with our standing orders, been circulated. Mr. Clerk.
Ministers, including policy statements, personal explanations, requests for leave to move the adjournment of the National Assembly on definite matters of urgent public importance, motions relating to the business or sittings of the National Assembly and moved by a minister, introduction of bills, public business, government's business.
Honorable members, our first presenter today is the Honorable Member, Ms. Coretta MacDonald. Ms. Coretta MacDonald, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague too for reminding me that the mic is not on. Mr. Speaker, it would be remiss of me this morning if I don't set some of the records straight for some things that were mentioned yesterday. The Honorable Minister of Tourism was very disrespectful when she classified, the Honorable Member classified, our dedicated public servants who have kept the wheels of this economy turning as obstructionists. When these things happen, Mr. Speaker, we are in for bad days and dark ones. Mr. Speaker, I rise to respond to the budget speech presented to this Honorable House by the Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, Dr. Ashni Singh. To all Guyanese, we continue to live in one of the most bountiful countries in this world. And amidst all the economic chaos and hardship, I am confident that with the right leadership, Guyana will reach her fullest potential. That leadership was placed in the hands of was in place for the last 5 years and on the road to the good life for the people of this nation and was on its way to completion. Regrettably, the work of the coalition government under the leadership of David Arthur Granger was cut short by bullyism and high political treachery. Mr. Speaker, on the eve of the first anniversary of the closure of school as a result of this pandemic, I would have expected the Honorable Member, Madam Priya Manikchan, to be dishing out a clear and concise plan to aid in protecting our teachers and their charges. Instead, what we got was an empty masquerade flounce and full loosey behavior about dismissals of Olato Sam and Marcel Hudson and Melcita Boville. Let me say to us here, Mr. Speaker, Mistress Melcita Boville retired twice. She retired as a teacher, she was rehired, and then she reached her years of retirement again, and her contract was not renewed because we needed to give space for other persons. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Olato Sam's contract came to an end and it was not renewed, so he was not dismissed. Mr. Marcel Hudson, Mr. Speaker, he had extended annual leave. And so he was sent on his leave. And unfortunately for him, those leave ran him into retirement. So let me set the record straight. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I am duty-bound to use this opportunity to recognize the efforts of our frontline workers all across this country. For the past year, COVID-19 has questioned the resolve of Guyanese workers, and they responded excellently. They have demonstrated the exceptional values which have made us always in high demand. Today, at this moment, I salute your efforts. Mr. Speaker, as is customary, on Friday, February 12th, the Guyanese public tuned in with much anxiety and fear with their radios, televisions, and other means of communication to hear what goodies were contained in the budget for them. They were anxious. This was the second budget during the period of the pandemic, which has completely wrecked their economic lives. Their sense of hope and anticipation of rescue was quickly dashed and crashed from the time this budget title was announced. A budget with the title, A Path to Recovery, Economic Dynamism and Resilience, can only proceed from a government and minds that are completely out of touch with the minds of the people who are struggling to make ends meet. Mr. Speaker, instead, I thought this budget should have read Rescue, Relief, and Recovery, or simply put, the Back to Work budget. Instead, the honorable member made his boast about economic dynamism and resilience, echoing the sentiments of the privileged class and rubbing salt in the wounds of the people who are presently bruised and battered economically. Having failed to grasp the scale of the challenge being faced by the people, Budget 2021 failed, and anyone who claims to have the interest of the working class cannot support this budget. Mr. Speaker, it was evident from the start that the honorable member came here with a clear mission to protect the owners of wealth and the haves. There was no chance for the have-nots. This assault on the Guyanese working class lasted for almost 4 hours with bluster and fanfare. Mr. Speaker, it was a stark and sad reminder that there was no chance for the people who continue to build this country, some with their bare hands, under this sad regime. Revisionist propaganda. Mr. Speaker, on page 2 of 77 pages of the 77 pages of this budget presentation, the honorable member in the office of the president with responsibility for finance took a vulgar dive into what the Kaichur News described as a political drivel. But it was worse than that. For the 26 minutes of this presentation, we witnessed an exercise in dangerous revisionist propaganda, the likes of which are associated with the most extreme authoritarian regimes. Perhaps the honorable member was just giving us a glimpse into what is to come. This budget, Mr. Speaker, sought to rewrite established Guyanese history, and in doing so, unfortunately, labeled the periods in which the PPP ruled as the glory days, and the other periods of another party as the dark period, which is totally the opposite. It was embarrassing and in every aspect, and can be easily debunked and collapsed under the most basic scrutiny. However, suffice it to mention the inescapable record that will show us that in 1970, at the birth of the Republic, that the Guyanese working class found a hero in the form of Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, who declared that it was official state policy to turn the small man into a real man. You see, Mr. Speaker, one cannot wipe away One cannot wipe away that history and make yourself a perfect example of what is described in the famous Calypso by Lord Nelson, King Lear. On the evidence of what was said in this part of the speech, I would not dare to suggest that the honorable member told untruths to this assembly, which could be concluded told untruths to this assembly. Thus, the team runs through this budget presentation and reinforces the need for ministers of finance to remain technocrats and not use budget presentations as street corner political rallies. If this principle was respected, Mr. Speaker, this highly politicized document would not have been produced. State of labor. Mr. Speaker, I take no pleasure in reporting the carnage and destruction brought to the working class people due to the economic fallout of COVID-19. But I do so in anticipation that it may serve as some education and encourage the honorable member to change the course of this directionless budget. The International Labour Organization, ILO, in its ILO Monitor, COVID-19 and the World of Work 7th edition reports that the global unemployment losses in 2020 was 114 million jobs. The Inter-American Development Bank submitted that the prolonged recession from the coronavirus could see job losses of minus 26% in the Bahamas, minus 24.8% in Jamaica, minus 16.7% in Guyana, minus 14.5% in Suriname, and minus 10.5% in Trinidad. Here, the Guyana Tourism Authority reported a 30% loss of jobs. 300 bauxite workers have been sent home. Almost 1,500 public servants have been dismissed on mere suspicion of them voting for the coalition. The cries of their children, Mr. Speaker, are on that side. Those members are on that side of the House. Hairdressers, barbershop owners, taxi drivers, vendors, fishermen, laborers, tour operators, airline workers, and more are all screaming for help. In some households, nobody is working, and landlords couldn't care less. The debtors are unrelenting and are not too moved by the fallout of COVID. Letters of notices to quit is now a booming business in the legal fraternity. In the case of the bauxite workers, Mr. Speaker, the talk of oneness and one Guyana in 1.3 of page 3 of this budget presentation rings hollow. Let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, the humiliation of 2 PSs that I can name so far. Madam Samantha Fidi was redesignated for no reason at all. Madam Karen Van Slytman Corbin was redesignated for no reason at all. And these persons were employed by the Public Service Commission. Mr. Speaker, the redesignation, we talk about oneness, and yet there's full redesignation of officers within the Ministry of Education whom were all appointed by the Public Service Commission. Mr. Speaker, we talk about oneness. And on the Trade Union Recognition Board, there is not one member from the Guyana Trades Union Congress on that board. Mr. Speaker, as of March 8th, all the officers who are of African descent that are operating in Region 3, they are going to be removed. Mr. Speaker, we cannot talk about oneness and we're not practicing it. Mr. Speaker, may I remind this House of what the late Barry White said, practice what you preach. Mr. Speaker, I cannot be racist, Mr. Speaker, because I have nephews and nieces that are Douglas. I cannot be racist, Mr. Speaker. When I have a child, Mr. Speaker, I cannot be racist. I see people, Mr. Speaker, I don't see colors. Mr. Speaker, this government has zero interest in policy making for the benefit of all Guyanese. and their decisions are driven by political discrimination and political considerations. Let me show you the evidence. Guyana presently supplies 6.6% of refractory-grade bauxite to the world market. We are considered a very important supplier of this natural resource. Despite this fact, the government refuses to rescue the bauxite workers and instead has decided to put $2 billion into Gaisuko in this budget. Allow me to be clear, Mr. Speaker, the sugar workers have been the backbone of this economy for decades, and we appreciate their dedicated work. However, it is time to tell the truth, Mr. Speaker. It is time to tell them that they are producing a product at 0.41 cents and selling at 0.13 cents, a loss of hard-earned taxpayers' dollars at 0.28 cents, and the transition is inevitable. Dr. Singh would have served this nation well, the Honorable Dr. Singh. And if he had demonstrated bold leadership by allowing the APNU AFC government by right-sizing the sugar, should have encouraged that by right-sizing the sugar industry. Instead, he came here to serve more Kool-Aid to the people of the sugar belt. Stop putting these workers' livelihood at risk by continuing to fool them about some turnaround in sugar. Where is the plan or investment to rescue the bauxite workers, I ask? Mr. Speaker, it is against this backdrop of economic chaos that this anti-working budget was presented. And it is for this reason the people cannot for a second understand why the need for these entire complex words in this budget. Mr. Speaker, the people don't need complicated words. Mr. Speaker, in this regime, they have decided to give $25,000 for one person per household. But Mr. Speaker, could $25,000 help in any way or any much way? Mr. Speaker, $25,000 can barely pay half of the average house rent for those who are lucky to receive it. Even though you boast of $9 million in the money in relief to the people, we are not sure who received this money and how it was dispersed. It is quite unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that my colleagues on the other side of the House cannot appreciate the magnitude of this crisis. I understand, Mr. Speaker, that it is difficult to do so from your AC ivory towers, but I urge you to feel the pain of the people and change this march of madness. Mr. Speaker, the Labor Department. Mr. Speaker, if it pleases you, I now turn my attention to what is in my parliamentary remit. Sir, I am aware of the argument which suggests that the APNU AFC government did not have much regard for labor because we subsumed the labor ministry under social protection. However, this argument has been proven baseless in the face of the track record of the past 5 years' achievement for labor. It appears, Mr. Speaker, the old adage still stands true. But I want to remind us, a school is only as good as its teachers. You can have numerous ministers committed to a government endeavor, Mr. Speaker, but if there's a lack in leadership within the building, you are wasting time. So, Mr. Speaker, now that we have squatted that argument out of the way, please allow me to prove the big failure of this budget. Honorable Kwame Mukai, Co-op Societies. As you are aware, Mr. Speaker, Guyana's economic structure was inherited from the colonial days, and it is one where wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few. It passed from generation to generation. The majority of people simply fed on the crumbs. any fundamental and transformational reform of Guyana's economic realities can only occur through systems as co-op societies. Co-op societies can bring the equity that is required to bring the small man and woman to a place of dignity. This is the reason why Lyndon Forbes Sampson Barnum enshrined the word cooperative in Guyana's official name. It was the recognition of the important role co-op societies play in ensuring everyone gets a piece of the economic pie. So when there is talk about transformation, economic dynamism, and resilience, and there is no bold announcement on how the people will share the wealth, you are just talking about the wealthy becoming wealthier. In this regard, Budget 2021 missed the big picture just the same way they missed that vessel without an engine. Mr. Speaker, dangling the fake carrot of 50,000 jobs with no plan on how to achieve this is not economic transformation. It is the continuation of the same old, same old, same old. Cooperative, Mr. Speaker, can serve as the engine of growth for the village economy and provide the kind of transformative economic power that cannot be easily matched. Mr. Speaker, it is for this reason that the APNU AFC government encouraged the expansion of co-op societies. We resuscitated the Guyana National Cooperative Union Limited to provide the much-needed oversight. Under our watch, 4 new co-ops were launched with the funding from the CDB as part of the Rural Agricultural Infrastructure Development Program. In 2019, Mr. Speaker, thrift societies were reintroduced in schools at both the primary and secondary levels to rekindle the spirit of cooperativism. We worked closely with the United Nations through UNDP to ensure the practice of cooperatives align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. When we were bullied out, Mr. Speaker, when we were bullied out of government, 1,268 cooperatives existed. While it is a fact that some of these organizations need to be brought to account, arbitrary and selective integrity audits are not the solution. We welcome audits, and that can shed a light on the financial situation of these entities. But we are aware of what entails when the PPPC speaks about audit. It is invariably done for narrow political motives, and it is a witch-hunting exercise to fish out their political opponents and install their cronies for election purposes. If you are interested in bringing co-ops up to the level where communities can have confidence in their operations, you would proceed on a structured approach by first reading the Government of Guyana Cooperative Policy, and secondly, by offering a new modified document that considers the modern environment. Mr. Speaker, we understood the importance of these organizations. They allow people to live, to pay their light bills, to pay their taxes, to pay rent, and to borrow money from credit unions that served as organized box hands. While with the onset of Guyana's imminent economic transformation, which started due to the policies of the APNU AFC government, cooperatives can play a vital role in ensuring that there is equity in this society. In the absence of any bold initiative of this nature, Budget 2021 demonstrated that there is no interest in leveling Guyana's economic playing field. Mr. Speaker, for this reason, I cannot lend support to an exercise that seems to feed crumbs to our people. Occupational health and safety. As you must know, Mr. Speaker, with the onset of an oil and gas economy, occupation health and safety takes center stage. Coupled with this pandemic, the task of holding oil companies and other companies operating in the oil industry to account to maintain effective occupational and health safety programs is not an easy one. These companies have existed for decades and have operated in numerous societies across this world. They are well versed in the art of putting their workers at risk to save a few pennies. With that in mind, Mr. Speaker, one would have thought that this installed regime would have seen the big picture and introduced some schemes to ensure that there is effective enforcement of occupational health and safety standards and statutes. But I guess that it's difficult to do so, Mr. Speaker, when you make deals with the devil for the sake of power. Mr. Speaker, at the heart of the occupational health and safety issues is the endemic problem of child labor. In the pre-pandemic period, Guyana had a 20.1% child labor rate. We are 1 year into this pandemic and our kids have been away from school. Has the government considered having a situation report on what is happening with our kids in the labor market? None. Where is the bold and transformative occupational health and safety policy making in this budget in light of this pandemic? Is the government aware that Guyanese workers are being subjected, Mr. Speaker, to the most unconscionable workplace practices where they are being forced to work in the most unsafe circumstances? If you are not aware, Mr. Speaker, if you're not aware, take a look from outside of your offices. Despite, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health publishing clear occupational health and safety guidelines due to COVID, this government, this regime continues to demand that public sector workers place their health at risk by reporting for duty with full staff in a clustered situation. How can we expect this government to hold other companies to account if they have little interest in workers who are right outside of their offices? You speak, Mr. Speaker, of grand industrial growth, and there is not even a whisper about a commensurate occupational health and safety policy. Again, Mr. Speaker, the character of this government is laid bare. It is all about friends and families and cronies and money. People-centered development seems to be an alien concept of this government. Mr. Speaker, workers cannot sleep well at night with this regime in place, and this budget brings no comfort. The APNU-AFC government, Mr. Speaker, distinguished itself from the People's Progressive Party on this front by consistently displaying our everlasting concern for the Guyanese workers. In the interest of this, Mr. Speaker, we launched the Occupational Health and Safety Policy in 2018. We engaged in nationwide implementation of this policy. We assiduously worked along with the strategic partners to improve the safety and health of all workers through a system of defined rights, responsibilities, and duties. And we gave the highest priority to the principle of prevention and a work atmosphere of respect at all levels. Mr. Speaker, this is the reason Guyanese people voted overwhelmingly for the coalition on March 2nd, but we all know the story. Mr. Speaker, this government was installed by geopolitical and business interests. So now it is time to repay, and sadly, workers will have to suffer at the altar of that arrangement. We are not too surprised, Mr. Speaker, that there was no grand announcement on the occupational health and safety policy in this budget. Yet another example of failure. I will not betray the working class people of this nation, Mr. Speaker, by endorsing this document that presents a slap in their faces. Minimum wages. Mr. Speaker, this unconscionable budget was brought to this honorable house in a time when there is a global wind of change sweeping across the world on the issue of minimum wage. In every world economy of any consequence, the debate over minimum wages is in full swing. The debate is immense. Some argue it will place businesses under pressure, and others argue it will increase productivity and create more employment. The coalition government is not too interested in all these complexities. We were clear in government, and we are now still clear. Workers at the bottom end of the pay scale must receive decent pay that affords them some human dignity. Hence, in 2017, we ordered the raising of private sector wage from an hourly rate of $202 to $255. Thus, workers taking home monthly wages from $35,000 to $44,200. Mr. Speaker, it is an undesirable situation to have the public sector minimum wage at $30,000 more than the private sector. It is a national evil. Mr. Speaker, we have sales girls receiving $8,000 to $9,000 per week in this country. In this, their $32,000 monthly salaries are being cut for all kinds of flimsy reasons. Mr. Speaker, it is the wild, wild west out here in the private labor market, and our workers cannot speak for fear of victimization. They have no voice.
Honorable member, this worker will call on someone to give you an extension.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude her presentation.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable member, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. They have no voice, but we will speak for them. We did not sign any deals, Mr. Speaker, with the devil. Conversely, we raised the public sector minimum wage to $70,000. And if the will of the people had prevailed, Guyanese would have seen a budget with both minimum wages significantly raised. The Guyana Chronicle of November 29, 2020 reported that the Minister of Labour will soon issue an order, Mr. Speaker, to increase the private sector minimum wage to $60,000. Almost 8 months would have passed and nothing has been done. It was also reported, Mr. Speaker, that the private sector complained about the economic fallout of the COVID-19 and argued that it was difficult to raise the minimum wage at this time. Oh, please. Mr. Speaker, our Guyanese people are intelligent. COVID-19 or not, it is not going to happen. We all know some sections of the private sector. We all know that some sections of the private sector were involved in the installation of this regime, and they are basically calling the shots. We dare the minister, Mr. Speaker, to make that order. We will propose, and you will be instructed to stand down by your masters. This is what happens when you have a government that does not reflect the will of the people. Mr. Speaker, recently we have witnessed a sustained campaign by this installed regime to rewrite history and to erase the legacy and achievements of the coalition government. In doing so, lots of untruth, slander, blatant falsehoods have been told. But despite the mischievous attempts, the hard work completed between 2015 and 2020 fast continued to withstand the flurry of propaganda. This, Mr. Speaker, cannot be challenged. Mr. Speaker, in an effort to increase employment at the opportunities at the level of the community, the coalition government, through the SLED initiative, heavily invested in the people of Guyana. This investment covered community-based projects all across Guyana, 9 regions, all across 9 regions, projects such as agriculture, livestock, added value products, IC, and tourism were some of the programs implemented. This project, Mr. Speaker, was designed to foster opportunities for economic development, creating opportunities to expand the economy in terms of new sources of jobs and economic activities for local communities. Due to the importance, Mr. Speaker, of micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises and the advantages they offer to the local economies, we introduced this SLED program. All Guyanese benefited from this program. More than 150 co-op comprising women and youths were among beneficiaries. Residents in Region 9 were able to start businesses in the agriculture sector, and numerous women received home economics training. You see, Mr. Speaker, when you cannot match our leadership and commitment to the people of this country, the only option is to scandalize the program. We will never give up on our dream to provide a good life for the people of this country. Not one set of people, Mr. Speaker, but all. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I have some very valuable advice for my friends on that side of the House. First, you need to know what you did and admit it. You need to understand, you need to accept why you ended up on that side of the House and all that happened. You need to know that you were installed, and you should be very conscious of your installment. It does not matter how you spin it, Mr. Speaker. You do not reflect the will of the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, in March, you saw those rallies. You observed the overwhelming support received by the coalition from Guyanese from all walks of life, and you decided that you must play a trick. Mr. Speaker, it was a green and yellow revolution that was blowing like a natural mystic across this land. So the result was 11,000 votes with no statutory documents and voter impersonation everywhere. This is your reality, and it will not go away. If you say that you have done nothing wrong, and that you won fair and square, Mr. Speaker, I dare this side of the House to support house-to-house registration to produce a clean list. We dare you to present yourself against us to the people and let there be free, credible, and fair democratic process. If you claim to be the majority, then this would be easy. This is the second budget, Mr. Speaker, as an installed regime, and it reflects yet again that fraud begets fraud. It is a trick with fancy words and grand promises. Mr. Speaker, the people of Guyana will never forget what you did, regardless of how much money you spend and how many promises you make. Mr. Speaker, I would close with the words of the famous Nestor Marley, who said, "Until that day, when the color of your skin and the texture of your hair, when there is no equality, we will not have a one Guyana." Mr. Speaker, I say to you, and I say to my colleagues on that side of the House, an electoral judgment is awaiting you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member, for that presentation. Honorable Members, again, another word of caution. In the Honorable Members, during her presentation, I could distinctly hear a number of unparliamentary words being said. Distinctly hear that. And I am going to circulate a list. At the bottom of page 58 of the handbook, it also says that the Speaker can disallow words which he feels is unparliamentary. So I heard words that rhyme with anger, not one time, two times, more than one time. We heard words with respect to appropriation of, or the illegal appropriation of assets. So please, again, let us ensure that we stick with the parliamentary words. I'd also ask that there be little to no movement behind the speakers when they're speaking, and during the presentation of the Honorable Member, there were 5 distinct movements behind her. The issue is not slipping out of a chair and going around. It's walking up 8 or 10 flights of stairs and the camera catches that. it looks disrespectful to the speaker, as if people are walking out on the speaker. Honorable members, I now call on the Honorable Minister of Housing and Water, the Honorable Member, Mr. Colin Crowell, to make his contribution. Honorable Minister, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by saying how proud I am to be part of a government that gets to put Guyana back together again after the calamity that was the APNU AFC coalition put us in. Since the PBPC's government returned to power, Mr. Speaker, confidence has been restored in the economy. Investors are flocking Guyana. There is a breath of fresh air that fills this land with optimism. And citizens can once again look forward to a future, a bright future with the People's Progressive Party Civic. Budget 2021, quite fittingly, is themed a path to recovery, economic dynamism, and resilience. It captures the vision of President Ali for our country and makes clear the focus of this government. And we are focused on greater and better prosperity for all the people of Guyana. We are not busy acquiring gold bands and beds off the backs of public servants. We are focused on returning Guyana to glory. While the members across the floor are busy making noise and spouting useless commentary, the members on this side cannot wait to begin implementing the plans and policies of this PBPC government. Plans and policies that will put money in the pockets of every Guyanese, rebuild the security and health sectors, provide jobs, and above all, bring hope back to our people. The members across the floor, Mr. Speaker, are not bothered by the challenges that are facing our fellow citizens. No, they want to rabble-rouse. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, they cannot discuss any budget in any sensible way because they do not have the knowledge or skills to do so. And more importantly, they cannot do so because they have failed. The APNU AFC government failed to implement the lofty plans that they gabbed about while in government. They failed to come up with the right strategies to tackle the many challenges that face our country, even with the goodwill they enjoyed in 2015. They have failed, Mr. Speaker, failed, and they know it. This nation cannot and must never forget the havoc that they wreaked on our fledgling democracy less than a year ago. We must never forget the war they declared on this nation when they refused to give up power. We must never forget that it is the PBPC, along with all the other guardians of democracy, that fought desperately for 5 long months to ensure that the votes cast is its cast for the party that for which the majority of this country favored, and that it was accounted for. In the face of challenges that threatened to undo us and a global pandemic at the time, the PPPC, under the leadership of His Excellency President Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali, stayed the course. Because, Mr. Speaker—
Honorable Member, second reference, but there's a standing order with respect to using the President's name to influence, right? So We have circulated His Excellency's speech. I'm sure there are ample quotes that you can quote if you want to invoke the name of His Excellency.
Because, Mr. Speaker, it is the PBPC that has the knowledge, the skills, and the competence to lead this country, to save it from the hell that the APNU AFC had plunged it. And so we want to get on with development. We want to get this country back on track, and Budget 2021 sees us firmly on the path that can only lead us to success. But, Mr. Speaker, when you listen to the previous speakers, including the last speaker and those from the opposition, you wonder if we are living in the same country. You wonder if these are the same persons, for many whom were in office for the last 5 years. You wonder. And, Mr. Speaker, much has been said that they have been claiming that they were not consulted. But, Mr. Speaker, they have refused to recognize a People's Progressive Party civic government and a president, a duly elected president. And if you do not recognize, how can we recognize you as the opposition? Mr. Speaker, they criticize the allocations for the school cash grants. But, Mr. Speaker, if that is not laughable, what is not? They, in 2015, removed their program completely, not even probably giving $1. And they are here in this house criticizing the amount of $15,000 for every child. Mr. Speaker, they have criticized the COVID cash grant program. When this nation, when many of us here for the 5 months were fighting to ensure that our votes were recognized, when many of them in this dome from the opposition were here daily in the recount, they, Mr. Speaker, were controlling the purses, they were controlling the budget, they were controlling the resources of the state. And while we were going through a COVID pandemic, not $1 or not one resource or not one major activity, not one hamper did they send to communities for relief for persons who were suffering from the COVID pandemic. But yet you come here, you are in government at that time, but yet you come here to criticize the COVID cash grant program.
Just use honorable before they.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, much has been said about the public service, but Mr. Speaker, they probably forgot when the then Minister of State, the Honorable now Leader of Opposition, Joseph Harmon, in a circle in 2015, indicated that candidates in elections that could not be in public service, that they had to be professionalized, and they terminated over 2,000 public servants, from cleaners to PSs, including 2 who are here sitting on this side of the government, and replaced them, Mr. Speaker, with candidates and activists embedded in every ministry and agency. Mr. Speaker, much has been said, and they're asking about free education that we promised at university. But Mr. Speaker, the PPPC's manifesto is there for all to see, and it is for all to read. But if you have a comprehension deficit, then, Mr. Speaker, the many courses that are being offered by the Honorable Minister of Public Service, I would ask that many of them, they apply for such courses, and this time we will legitimately allow them to have the scholarship. And so, Mr. Speaker, we have committed that we will deliver and we will have free university education. But we never said that it was going to be happening on our first budget presentation. We said between our first term. And Mr. Speaker, I'm reminded by the last speaker, I'm wondering if this was the same person, in addition to coming to the opposition office in 2018, praised the People's Progressive Party Civic, the General Secretary of the GTU, Mr. Speaker, said that teachers received more in terms of salary and other benefits when the PPPC government was in office during the pre-2015 era, in comparison to what was being given to them at the time by the APNU-AFC coalition government. Who said that, Mr. Speaker? In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, the honorable member forgot that the then minister said and called the teachers who had to strike, they called them selfish. The honorable then Keith Scott called the teachers selfish. Did we forget this? Avaricious and greedy, calling the Amerindians. Did we forget this, Mr. Speaker? And so, Mr. Speaker, we have members from the other side that are coming here and pretending that they didn't just come out of office. And so you have claims by the former Minister of Education that the students then only taught under the APNU-AFC. And they said, but let me repeat for you, you won't understand. The years when Guyanese stopped in the Caribbean, Mr. Speaker, 1997, let me repeat again, 1999, 2003, you don't want to hear it, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2017. And so, Mr. Speaker, you can come here and pretend. Mr. Speaker, since the Honorable Region 2 want to hear, let me give him a little. Mr. Speaker, I stand here today proud as the Minister of Housing and Water to share with this House and the citizens who are paying attention, not those who are making noise on the other side. Because home ownership, Mr. Speaker, is arguably the main goal of every Guyanese citizen. And this PPPC has always made housing a priority. The last government decentralized the housing. We set up a Ministry of Housing and Water. What did they do? They put the housing as a subset under a ministry, just like what they did with the Labor Department. Today, Mr. Speaker, home ownership is arguably the main goal of every Guyanese citizen. and we have made housing affordable and a priority. Today, many areas that were populated with bush are home to thriving communities thanks to the foresight and the vision of the PPPC government. But the last 5 years of the incompetent coalition government derailed the housing drive that was even left by our president and the then Minister of Housing and Water. Their ideas for housing were weak and inadequate. Mr. Speaker, be reminded that it was the coalition government that played musical chairs with the housing and water sectors. Multiple ministers, board chairmen, directors fired the public servants, and yet they did not and could not clear the backlog and reduce the processing for housing applications, or even to meet the targets that they set. They were too busy, for example, getting their husband into contracts or even asking for laptops. They promised to end discrimination, allocation of lands, yet our learned Attorney General is now tasked with recovering hundreds of acres of lands that they doled out to their friends and family. They promised affordable housing to teachers, public servants, nurses, discipline forces, among others, and they did not deliver. They promised incentives to private sector to reduce construction costs, and again could not deliver, Mr. Speaker. They could not keep any of the promises that they made in their own manifesto. Imagine, as has been said, between 2010 and 2015, 22,000 plus house lots were given out to citizens by the PPPC government then. Astonishingly, under the APNU-AFC coalition, 7,534 house lots in 5 years. And Mr. Speaker, of that amount, 2,000 plus were allocated as part of the election gimmick and the post-election period. While we were fighting for democracy, they were busy allocating to some of their cronies. In fact, Mr. Speaker, even when the coalition had one big idea for housing, even that they could not get right. Their big idea? Let's introduce duplexes. And they proceeded to have contractors construct duplexes, but they did not think to have the Condominium Act amended to include this type of house. The result is, Mr. Speaker, those citizens who invested their hard-earned dollars into these houses cannot get insurance or titles, and even more worrying is that the banks are not amendable to holding duplexes as collateral. How could any Minister of Housing with an ounce of sense allow this to happen? No wonder, Mr. Speaker, even though they inherited a robust housing and water sector, it was plunged into chaos for 4 years. And so it falls to us, this PPPC government, to once again rescue the housing sector. By mid-year, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister of Legal Affairs will be bringing legislation to amend the Condominium Act to allow banks to accept titles for those houses, insurance companies to issue policies to those homeowners, and more importantly, to allow these homeowners to access loans for expansion. Because of these and many failures of the coalition, Mr. Speaker, in housing and water sector and every other sector for that matter, the housing sector has received an allocation of $8.9 billion of which 6 billion is for infrastructure and utility works in new and existing areas, all aiding and advancing our commitment to allocating a minimum of 50,000 house lots to citizens within this, our first term in office. This year, Mr. Speaker, 2021 alone, we intend to allocate 10,000 house lots, 7,000, a minimum of 7,000 land titles to citizens, many of whom have been waiting for years to own their own homes. Let the House be reminded that in just 4 months in office, 3,600 house lots and 413 titles were handed over to citizens. This year, we will also build 1,000 homes for young and for low-income earners, and residents of Region 10 will also benefit from the construction of over 1,000 homes through a public-private partnership with community involvement in every step and every process. Over these 5 years, therefore, Mr. Speaker, citizens will benefit from the construction of new roads, bridges, water, and electricity, distribution networks, and improved drainage in all 10 regions. New developments, including the construction of roads, bridges, drainage, water, and electrical distribution networks, will be undertaken to complete infrastructure development works in Region number 3, Region number 4, Region number 5, and Region number 6. And if you want to hear, these include Anna Katrina, CI, Edinburgh, Stewartville, Metamerzorg, Commons Lodge, LBI, Annandale, Monrepos, Providence, Prospect, Little Diamond, Grove Diamond, Vigilance, Bladenhall, and Strathspey in Region 4, Experiment, Region 5, Hampshire, Williamsburg, Ordnance, Fortlands, number 75 Village, number 79 Village in Region number 6. 25 kilometers of roads within Regions 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10 will be upgraded, and close to 13,500 citizens, or 3,278 house lots, will be delivered this year. These include Onderneming in Region 2, Touche lot, Farfaith Harmony, Westminster, Onderneming, Luston Ross, Bell West in Region 3, Farm, Cove and Garden, Providence, Prospect, Perseverance, Peters Hall, Horstelling, Good Hope, Monrepos, Nonpareil, Hope South, Hope Estate, and Hope Dutch 4 in Region 4, Bath, Hope Experiment in Region 5, Ordnance, Fortlands, and Kilcoy Chesney in Region number 6, Tapachinga and Culvert City in Region 9, Amelia's Ward, Linden in Region 10. Our 2021 National Housing Development Program, Mr. Speaker, will include the construction of 1,000 low-income and young professional housing units in Region number 4, in Commons Lodge, Prospect, Providence, Little Diamond, and Great Diamond. In Region number 3, in Onderneming and Wales. In Region number 6, Ordnance, Fortlands, Hampshire, and Williamsburg, and Region number 10, Amelia's Ward. In addition, Mr. Speaker, we will distribute and we will have the home improvement subsidies, as well as build core homes in Parfaith, Harmony, and Sophia. You will be pleased to note, Mr. Speaker, that even recreational facilities have been included. Mr. Speaker, outlets to foster and enhance creative aptitudes. This is the future. The future is bright, Mr. Speaker, with a People's Progressive Party civic government. By the end of 2021, Mr. Speaker, through the CHPA Central Housing and Planning Authority, Guyanese will see and commencement of new infrastructure development works in region number 1, region number 2, Charity, region number 3, Onden Niming, region number 9, Letem, and region number 10, Amelia's Ward. Mr. Speaker, the hinterland and the Amerindian communities are no exception. The record of the People's Progressive Party Civic with respect to the development in hinterland community speaks for itself. In the area of housing, we will therefore commence this year the construction of 100 homes within the hinterland communities. We will continue the road construction to complete the access road from Great Diamond to Mandela, with the construction of the 4-lane highway and the heavy-duty bridge to connect at Mocha. Mr. Speaker, in addition to other users from the East Bank, the West Coast, the West Bank, in excess of 20,000 residents will directly benefit from this new access road, and over 100,000 indirectly as part of the housing area we have developed on the East Bank. Persons will therefore now have a choice to access Georgetown or onto the East Bank when they didn't have such before. Mr. Speaker, this work our government is engaged. We are focused on providing our citizens with the best housing interventions. Not only are we providing affordable housing, not only are we making them sustainable in well-developed communities, we are also ensuring that the private sector partners can contribute toward the housing drive, and so the ease of the burden of high construction and material costs. We have removed the VAT from locally produced building and construction materials, including sand, stone, concrete blocks, plywoods, logs, and lumber. This means, Mr. Speaker, that those persons who have house lots and who are beneficiaries can look forward to paying cheaper prices for building materials. Additionally, we will soon implement a single window approval system for the planning permission process, which will greatly reduce the processing time. It is no secret, Mr. Speaker, that the process to obtain a planning permit is painstaking, frustrating, and really a headache. Potential business owners are saddled with the responsibility of running back and forth to a number of government agencies, including Guyana Fire Service, the Environmental Protection Agency, and other many areas to check on the status of their permit. This PPPC government has promised to improve the ease of doing business, and so bottlenecks, like I've just described, will negatively affect this global goal of ours. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we must recognize and recalibrate the planning permit process so that it can be more efficient and ultimately be more effectively. Mr. Speaker, that is why we will ensure that the necessary investments are made to enhance, strengthen, and modernize the capacity of the staff and the technology to be ensured that this is in process. I am happy to report, Mr. Speaker, that we have already begun the preliminary work to revamp this process. During the next few weeks, all local democratic organs will be provided with a detailed list of documents that must be submitted and a revised building application form. For these measures, these two measures alone, Mr. Speaker, will significantly reduce the processing time. The priority of making life easy for our citizens is not limited to house lot allottees. We have made provisions for the first time for homeowners to also get extra monies by raising the low-income mortgage ceiling to $12 million, as well as increasing the ceiling for mortgage issued by the New Building Society from $12 million to $15 million. This intervention was highly anticipated by homeowners, as it means, Mr. Speaker, that their interest rates will be low, and of course, that other commercial banks will now have to become more competitive. This also means that citizens will now be able to access higher loans and follows that they can now do more on their houses, and their monthly installments will be reduced as a result of lower rates, and the overall, it is the citizens that will be the winners. Mr. Speaker, key to having great communities is also to ensure that the infrastructure is in place, from street lights to green spaces to also clean water. Clean water, therefore, means a priority for the Ministry of Housing and Water. Since coming to office, Mr. Speaker, my team has identified several challenges to assess and distribute the water, from high iron content to low treated water coverage, high levels of non-revenue water, and a marked deficit in accessing water by the hinterland population. This was compounded by the cruel imposition of VAT on water, which was borne by some of our most vulnerable citizens and pensioners.
Honorable member, for you to continue, you have to get an extension.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude. Thank you.
Thank
It
you,
is
Honorable
important-
Member. Mr. Shearer, Honorable Member, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is important for me to educate this House about the state of the water sector that we inherited. And the other side likes to trumpet the name one Van West Charles. Well, this is his legacy too. Mr. Speaker, GWI was on the verge of a financial collapse. Despite the steep tariff increase by the previous government, it had significant loss of $1.1 billion. So dire was its situation that it had to rely on bank overdraft facilities to finance situations and its operations. Sadly, but predictably for the coalition strategies, overdrafts totaling $270 million did nothing to alleviate its losses. Employment costs skyrocketed since 2015. Rental of building and the debt plagued the entity. At August 2020, GWI debt to suppliers totaled $783 million. And even worse, over 5,000 customers were denied service connections because inventory levels of service connection materials that are required to provide a service had deteriorated. Also, in August 2020, the new management inherited over 8,000 water leaks, which had been ignored for the period 2015 to August 2020. But there's good news. Since we came into government, under the stewardship of the CEO, Sheikh Baksh, GWI has collected $5.3 billion in revenue, an increase of $1 billion over 2019, and this is during COVID. Its debt is reduced. It did not access overdraft facility, and overall, the financial situation of GWI has improved. And this has happened in less than 7 months and without burdening our treasury. Mr. Speaker, that is the legacy of Van West Charles. Mr. Speaker, not only have we removed the VAT on water imposed by the previous government, we have reinstated the water subsidy that was removed. As a result, the removal of VAT on water consumption that exceeded $1,500 or 14 cubic meter over 3,000 customers will see their disposable income increase by some $107 million a year. With the subsidy reinstatement, more than 26,300 pensioners will be directly impacted by some $300 million increase in their disposable income. Government National Budget Initiative on 2021 have once again demonstrated our commitment to the people of Guyana by announcing a 5% reduction in water tariffs across the board, targeting all levels of society, all levels of consumers. This initiative, when implemented, is estimated to provide an additional $248 million benefit to the people of Guyana for a minimum of 173,000 customers. Overall, Mr. Speaker, government's initiative in the water sector in less than a year will provide an estimated $655 million increase in disposable income to the people of Guyana. The GWI therefore now operates on a new 5-year strategic plan that aligns with our national priorities of providing clean, reliable, and affordable water. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, we are focused on increasing access to treated water coverage to 90% to reduce our non-revenue water and modernize the infrastructure. And this, Mr. Speaker, is a commitment the People's Progressive Party Civic will intend to implement. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, in under 7 months, short months, 7 months, my ministry has made significant progress in addressing the challenges within the housing and water sectors. We have chartered a course and our minds are set on meeting our targets. I have absolutely no doubt that we will restore this sector to its former glory and even surpass it. The PPPC government is not about talking, Mr. Speaker. We are about doing the work. We are focused on keeping the promises we made to the citizens of this great land of ours, and together we will. I therefore commend and recommend this 2021 budget to the House as the path to recovery for our nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Minister of Housing and Water, the Honorable Member Colin Crowell. I now call on the Honorable Member, Mr. David Patterson, to make his contribution. Honorable Member, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to start off first by acknowledging the hard work of the staff of the Ministry of Finance in preparing this budget. It's a thankless task. I know they are just responsible for the numbers. The policies, of course, comes from the government. Mr. Speaker, I begin my budget with a minute to reflect on the promises made by this government since assuming office. And so I'll just address a few. One of their promises, sir, the creation of 5,000 new jobs. What have they done, sir? They have fired more than 2,000 persons, and they have not created a new job, sir. They promised, sir, they promised 40,000 per month in old age pension, sir. What they're giving is 25,000, sir. That is not a promise made. They promised, sir, better management, renegotiation of the oil contracts for the benefit of all Guyanese. What do we have, sir? An intimate relationship that supports flaring, a lack of inclusivity, and no renegotiation as promised. Sir, let me tell you one of the promises that they keep, and the Honorable Minister Colin Crowell, sir, made mention of it. The removal of VAT on local construction materials. Sir, they remove VAT on local construction materials. But what the reality is, sir, not a single price has dropped. Not a single price has dropped in the 4th of October 2020 to now, sir. Stone prices remain the same. Sand prices remain the same. Cement, blocks remain the same. Plywood, sir, I hear the honorable member coming and saying to the plywood, sir, all those prices remain the same. Sir, timber prices have actually even gone up, even though they claim, sir, that they've reduced the VAT. Overall, sir, from October the 1st, 2020 to now, construction costs, construction material costs have risen 4%. We have been tracking it. So, sir, the question is, sir, who is getting the gains of the VAT relief that they have done, sir? And just as our honorable member, Jarita Fernandez, was saying, sir, when you remove the smoke screen, sir, when you remove the mirrors, what is there in this budget for the ordinary man? Sir, you ask any home builder now, you would note out that their prices have not dropped under this government. They've actually increased. Mr. Speaker, what this side of the House has been asking and what we've been saying in all of our discussion is that the government has to address the root cause, the income of our members, income of our workers. And I stand off, sir, by asking, not at the end of my speech, immediately, that when the minister gets up, announces 10% interim payment for our power service, retroactive to January. Sir, and I also want, on behalf of the workers in our country, an increase in the income tax threshold to $1.2 million annually, plus a reduction of the income tax rate, sir, for the 25% for the bottom tier and 35% to the top tier. Mr. Speaker, I know how that they will say, so where will you get the money from? Sir, but this budget has already dug us a very deep, dark hole with the deficit. At least, sir, if we approve these measures, the people will at least have a torchlight to see their way through this. Mr. Speaker, the main focus of my budget presentation this morning shall be oil and gas sector. However, I need to make a general comment on the PPP 2025 budget submission. Mr. Speaker, when I concluded my 2020 budget presentation last year, I concluded with this statement, if you can recall. Mr. Speaker, and I quote, "I'd like to end my contribution by providing an insight into budget 2021. There, and of course I went on to say, there's a slew of interesting transformational projects, all with studies and in the general and in final design stage. In fact, some of those projects that you will see in the PPP 21 budget, sir, in the quote, and I went on to list a few others following. Mr. Speaker, I listed a number of projects that the AP and UAFC government left that the PPP will, and I stated that the PPP will shamelessly attempt to claim it as their own. I listed projects such as the Linden-Mabura Hill Road. That's an AP and UAFC designed and funded road, sir. The Linden-Soosdijk Highway upgrade. That's an AP and UAFC designed and funded project, sir. The East Coast bypass, all the way up to CGIA. Road linkages in Region 3, which the PPP are now calling their superhighway. New bridges, sir, over the Demerara River, sir. Plus a new bridge at Monkey Jump, Lincoln, Particle. And several other projects. Mr. Speaker, do these projects sound familiar? Of course, they should. Because if you read Section E of the 2021 budget speech, headed transformational infrastructure, they're all listed there. In fact, Mr. Speaker, every single major transformational project in the 2021 budget, with the exception, of course, of the Milo Falls project, was conceptualized, designed, and in most cases funded, was secured by the AP and UAFC government. Every single one. Mr. Speaker, I anticipate that the PPP will try to deny these facts. However, they can control the media, sir, but they cannot control the World Wide Web. Mr. Speaker, I invite you to visit my Facebook page, Honorable David Patterson MP. Sir, I know you're on Facebook, sir, because I know you follow Sherrod Duncan and Minister and Cathy Youth. Sir, that's the only way you could know what they post on such regular basis. But sir, you know how to navigate yourself around Facebook, sir. There on my page, sir, it's been there for quite a while, years. There on my page, you will see the AP and UAFC 2017 to 2025 Infrastructure Development Plan, which was prepared in 2016, less than a year after we took office, some 5 years ago. And this is the backbone of our impressive infrastructure momentum. You will see every single major road and bridge project that the PPP are now claiming as their transformation project. Every single major project in the 2021 budget is detailed and even costed in that document. Mr. Speaker, our developmental plan was not only limited to roads and bridges, but it also contained an energy roadmap. The Honorable Prime Minister is due to speak on Monday, and he will tell us how, sir, and I'm sure to a lot of fanfare, about the PPP plans for energy expansion and diversification. He will mention projects, sir, as GPL 47 megawatt new generators, which will be commissioned later on this year, which will help to end blackouts. What I would say, what the Prime Minister will not say, sir, that project was designed, funded, secured, and constructed by the AP and UAFC administration. In his speech, I bet in his speech, the Prime Minister will say that they will be doing solar farms in Madia, Legwan, Partika, and Letem. What the Prime Minister will not say is that these projects were designed, funded, and procured by the AP and UAFC administration. In his speech, sir, the Prime Minister will say there's hydro projects in Kumu and Makumaka. What he will not say, sir, that these projects were designed, funded, tendered by the AP and UAFC government. Sir, there'll be a lot of them, and fanfare, sir. The Kato hydro project, sir, is scheduled to be completed this year. What the Prime Minister will not say that the project was designed, funded, and secured and constructed by the AP and UAFC. And he will go, sir, and I say this here to the Deputy Speaker who is not here, and he will go to Anai and our indigenous communities and say, look what the PPP has done for you. But he will not tell them that the many hydro projects that you're putting in there were designed, funded, conceptualized by the AP and UAFC. Every single thing. Mr. Speaker, according to Webster's online dictionary, to plagiarize means to steal and pass off the ideas or words of another as one own, or to present as new and original idea or product derived from an existing source. It is crystal clear, Mr. Speaker, the PPP has plagiarized the AP and UAFC Infrastructural Development Plan. Mr. Speaker, I want to give the PPP credit for recognizing the value of our plans for the betterment of the country. But at a minimum, we demand that they give us credit for the work we've done. The people of this country deserve to know the truth. Mr. Speaker, having established that the 2021 Infrastructure Development Plan with the AP and U, it begs the question, what are the two ministers in the Ministry of Public Work doing on a daily basis? Sir, Mr. Speaker, it's obvious that the ministry is on autopilot. And sir, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing, sir. Having the ministry run on autopilot is not necessarily a bad thing, sir. The less these two ministers get involved, the less damage they can cause. Mr. Speaker, the evidence says that the only job that the two ministers do on a daily basis is to fire hard-working public servants. It is public knowledge that the chief works officer was fired. So too was the general manager, the director general married, the procurement specialist within the MIB, the GM of the Harbour Bridge, the hinterland coordinator. Sir, they have now turned their attention to the core team. They have already terminated the entire core team members in Leguan, Wakenham, in Region 3, Region 4, and Region 6. More than 60 youth, sir, and single mothers are being placed on the breadline. Mr. Speaker, I ask whether this is the PB fulfillment of their campaign promise to Guyana for taking care of women and including youths in our national life. Mr. Speaker, I wanted a quick mention, sir, before I go on to oil and gas. CGIA, sir. Sir, I see that there's $2.5 billion involved in C.5 for the CGIA. But, sir, on December 22nd last year, there's a big fanfare that the contractors agreed to put in $1.8 billion of his own money for the project, to finish the project, sir. So why, sir, is there money included for that taxpayers' money? Sir, the questions need to be asked, sir, who will be executing the work, sir? If it's the same contractors, and what is the procurement process that will be utilized? Mr. Speaker, what should be of more immediate concern to the citizens of this country, sir, is the status of the contractor's performance and retention bond. As of July 30th, 2020, the then Ministry of Public Infrastructure retained two bonds, sir, collectively valued at $14 million US. The largest of the two, the performance bond valued at $8 million US, was a bond guaranteeing the client, sir, that the contractor will execute the project to the required standards. Otherwise, they can cash that bond in demand. The other bond, sir, retention bond, was $5 million, was a guarantee that the client, the contract will fix any defects. These bonds, sir, I want to make a mention, are very, very important. And they're important because Exim Bank of China has already given the contractor all the money. And in return, what we hold is a bond to ensure that they do what they are. Sir, as I speak here today, sir, those bonds have expired on the 31st of December 2020. In other words, sir, the contractor can walk away today, and the ministry and the country will lose $14 million US, and our only recourse, sir, will be going to the court. A wholly unsatisfactory and unacceptable position. Mr. Speaker, since the announcement of the discovery of oil in 2015, there has been much talk inside and outside of Guyana about the strength and value of the contract signed between the government of Guyana and Exxon. Mr. Speaker, the PVP promised, sir, and I quote, "We will approach the oil and gas sector in a national, nonpartisan way and put a framework in place to properly manage the sector with a focus on proper management of the resource, transparency and accountability, and the securing benefits for all Guyanese. This will involve better contract management, renegotiation, arm's length management, and the regulation of the industry, and involvement of civil society in the oversight." While we in the opposition maintain our claim that the 2016 agreement was a vastly improved contract on the 2019 agreement signed by the PPP, we are willing to offer the government the opportunity never afforded to APNU-AFC. We are willing to offer our support on presented a united position so that jointly we can address the alleged inadequacies of the contract and any other documents, including the environmental permits. While in opposition, the PPP never offered the government their support on any issue other than our border controversy with Venezuela. The lack of a unified front has allowed various parties to exploit the differences, which is not to the benefit of the country and its citizens. It is our position that once we present a united position to our international partners, the harder it will be for them to continue ignoring our concerns. Moving forward, this issue is squarely in the hands of the government. The time for grandstanding and blame is over. The time to act in the best interest of the citizens of our country is now. Mr. Speaker, the APNUAFC administration, via our Minister of Natural Resources, made it a requirement that Exxon fully briefs the PPP opposition in every discovery and development. These briefings were conducted bilaterally between Exxon and the PPP, with no involvement of our government. This was done because, in our opinion, that all political parties should be fully briefed on the important emerging industry. The opposition has yet to be briefed by any of the operators because the government has requested that no information be shared with us. This is in stark contrast to our handling of the sector and does not reflect the claim of inclusivity that the government has been making speeches about. Mr. Speaker, a lot has been said over the last few months on the vexing issue of flaring of natural gas by Exxon, something that is expressly prohibited by their environmental permit. While acknowledging that mistakes and breakdowns can occur, APNUAFC Coalition is not satisfied with the handling of this issue by the operators as well as the government. The response by Exxon on this issue is quite frankly not only disrespectful and insulting to the Guyanese public, they continue breaking the laws of the land with impunity. Mr. Speaker, the company started off saying that there will be no flaring from day one. Then they went to day 60, said that they would cease flaring by day 60. Then it moved to day 90. Now the promise is going over 1 year without change, and with dire consequences of severely polluting the atmosphere, with the flaring of close to 14 billion cubic feet of glass in violation of the permit, and hence in violation of Guyana laws. Further, Mr. Speaker, Exxon's apparent intent must be seriously worrisome to this Parliament and the people of Guyana by saying that the justification of their flaring is because Guyana is a carbon sink country. In other words, sir, because we have pristine rainforests, and we have the capacity to take more air pollutants. Sir, what they're saying to you, sir, if you have a lovely, well-maintained garden, your neighbor can come to you and light the fire because you take care of your garden. That's what they're saying, sir. They have no responsibility to us, sir. Sir, the company proceeds to insult us further by saying that they have to produce and flare above the legal limit because Guyana is a poor country, especially in this COVID-19 time. And we need the money badly. So it's better for them to continue to pollute our environment than them stop flaring, sir. That, sir, is what they're saying to you. Sir, in other words, to the Guyanese people, they're saying, y'all are hungry belly. Hungry belly. Let us keep doing what we got to do, because we got to help y'all hungry belly people out, sir. Sir, while the coalition welcomes Exxon to our shores in open arms, their only reason, sir, for being here is to make money for Exxon, and not because they want to help this poor country. Mr. Speaker, a motion has been introduced in this Parliament to have this matter fully debated. And I have learned, sir, the motion has been approved, and I thank you, even with amendments, and I thank you. That debate, sir, the opposition will further set out our position. Mr. Speaker, allow me quickly, sir, to turn my attention from flaring to dumping, sir, of water. Mr. Speaker, just as frightening to the protection of our health, environment, and rich biodiversity and fishing industry is the dumping of wastewater produced with oil into the ocean. Here again, Mr. Speaker, when challenged, Exxon excused this unsavory practice by callously misleading the Guyanese public that the World Bank approves of such a practice. Mr. Speaker, this is a blatant misrepresentation of the World Bank guidance on this practice. What the World Bank actually says, Mr. Speaker, is that the reinjection of produced water must be the first option, and water dumping must only be considered if reinjection is not financially or technically feasible. Mr. Speaker, there is no question, not even by Exxon, that the reinjection is both technically and financially feasible. Mr. Speaker, while it cannot at this stage be attributed to our emerging oil and gas sector, our local fisher folks have been reporting reduced catches. These are small as well as commercial companies. It is an issue which requires the input of this Parliament. Thus, sir, I am putting the Parliament on notice, sir. We intend to bring a motion on water dumping shortly to the Parliament to ensure that it is analyzed and the facts come to light. Mr. Speaker, I'm watching my time. I would like to turn my attention to the proposed gas to shore project. I would like to put on record, sir, the difference in the approach for this project with the two administrations, sir. In September 2015, at a cabinet briefing by Exxon, we were informed that the company was desirous of taking Lisa 1 to early production. However, this early production date may result in the flaring of associated gas. In September 2015, Cabinet advised that flaring would not be permitted. Sir and Exxon were requested to find alternative routes. In February 2016, sir, Exxon informed that the reinjection of associated gas was possible. They moved from they have to flare to reinjection is possible, sir. In July of 2016, sir, in September 2016, the Ministry of Natural Resources officially requested Exxon to consider the possibility of bringing gas to shore. At the same time, sir, we undertook a desktop study on the proposed onshore base for the support of the fledgling offshore oil and gas industry. Sir, it was based on this initial study, sir, that the then Minister of Natural Resources announced that it was our desire to locate the future onshore bases in Berbice in 2016. Sir, in 2017, Exxon confirmed, sir, that they could bring 30 to 50 million cubic feet onshore for the purpose of oil generation. Immediately, sir, we contacted the IDB. Immediately, sir, we asked them for a list of their exports, and we conducted a pre-feasibility study. That's in March 2017. In June 2017, sir, a final report was presented on the possibilities, technical feasibilities of it. So in September 2015, sir, we organized a multi-stakeholder working group there. It had Ministry of Public Infrastructure, GPL, GEA, Ministry of Finance, Go Invest, Ministry of Business, Ministry of natural resources, sir. And this working group, sir, went about and examined 10 possible sites for the landing of oil and shore. Sir, we will see another